Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. My name is Daphne Worrell, Marketing Manager for ODG by MCG, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's webinar introducing the new ODG by MCG. During this webinar, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat feature located in the lower corner of your screen. We'll save some time at the end for your questions. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to you within 1 week. Our presenter today is Ingrid O'Keefe, Director of Business Development for ODG by MCG. Ingrid develops and maintains strategic partnerships in the work comp, short-term disability, and auto insurance markets. Ingrid has worked for 10 years in the delivery of evidence-based guidelines and claims analytics. Ingrid lives in the San Diego area with her husband and 2 children. And Ingrid, you can take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Daphne. And just to confirm, can you see my screen?
I can.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. And welcome to the March edition of the Intro to ODG by MCG webinar. What I will do today is take you through ODG by MCG, our new web-based version of ODG. I will keep this presentation on a high level, and keep in mind you can schedule a one-on-one demonstration with an account manager or our implementation specialist. As many of you know, ODG was acquired by MCG Health in January of 2017. One exciting aspect of being part of MCG Health is they allow us to continue to focus on our domain expertise of workers' comp and disability while they serve the general healthcare population with similar evidence-based guidelines. Another exciting component of being part of MCG is we are now part of the Hearst Corporation, and specifically the Hearst Health Network. Hearst is a large media conglomerate that owns several companies in the consumer media space, like magazines, newspapers, and television stations. They also own several companies in the business media space, which is where ODG falls under. One of Hearst's core philosophies is that business media should reflect consumer media. Just because it is technical doesn't mean it should feel that way. It should be fast, fun, and easy to use. So they have invested heavily in this new interface. For those of you who are familiar with the legacy version of ODG, you will immediately notice a big aesthetic difference in ODG by MCG. Arguably, the most important objective of this user interface is to make it more intuitive. Some of the feedback I personally received about the legacy version of ODG is the content and tools are extremely powerful, but sometimes clients were not aware of their existence because of the layout of the site. So with ODG by MCG, we have elected to take a tab-based approach to organizing the site, really working to bring the content out to our clients. So as you can see, we have included all the different tabs at the top of the screen, really making it readily apparent the information and tools that are included. We're still breaking the site up into 3 key areas of content, and those include disability duration, medical treatment, and cost. And we really see these 3 areas as being interrelated, because the longer that a patient is out of work, the higher the cost of that claim becomes. And really a key ways to mitigating time out of work is both by taking a proactive approach to managing return to work and setting those goals, but also by identifying appropriate medical treatment. Now, you can search this site a variety of different ways. You could click on one of the top 15 return to work diagnoses or medical treatments. And these lists can be configured, so if you have popular diagnoses that you see more frequently than the ones included, we certainly could incorporate those for you, as well as the same for medical treatments. You can also click on an area of the body, or possibly the most obvious way to search the site is just to type in whatever you're searching for within the search bar at the top of the screen. And that's what I'll do. So I could type in something like low back sprain. And once I type in a search criteria, you'll notice that the various options are populated underneath. Now you can select these options, and one thing to note is the system automatically defaults to your searching by a topic or a keyword. Now, if you prefer to search by a particular code, you can certainly do that by clicking on this codes drop-down. So maybe you want to search by an ICD-10 code or a CPT code. You can accomplish that up here. Or you can just select from one of the medical topics. So I'll select this low back sprain. And after I select this, the duration screen is populated with your projected return to work timeframes. And those are projected at 2 different data sets. And those include your B value, which is the best practice. So this is really the goal that you want to aim for. This is the optimal return to work time frame. It's also populated with the A value, which is the average return to work time frame. So the A value is a better value to use for retrospective benchmarking. And the B value is a better value to use for proactive claims or case management. This includes your return to work management timeline, which indicates the initial day out of work, the average time out of work, your target best practice. And then it shows you that in order to achieve that best practice, a return to work prescription should be issued on or before day 7. And this timeline can be configurable. So if there are elements you would like to remove from the timeline, you certainly could do that. Or you might want to include some additional elements onto this, like when to engage with a telephonic case manager or nurse case manager, etc. So I mentioned the return to work prescription, and one of the best things you can do with ODG is to share the content. So you get everyone who's engaged with the claim on the same page, and you're working towards one shared goal. So you can share this content by clicking on this printer icon. You could print this entire page, or you could create a return to work prescription, which is what I'll do. So once I open up the return to work prescription, I can decide I want to include a job function evaluation form, a diagnosis. I can also include more claim-specific information, perhaps my name, the employer name, my email and phone number, employee name, let's say Jane Doe, physician name, let's say John Doe. I can include the date of injury, date of surgery if applicable. And then you can decide in this comments box you can click in here and type in whatever you would like to type in. Dear Dr. Smith, for example, do you agree with this return to work time frame? Or you can insert the ODG recommended comments. And these comments could also be configurable. So if there's something that you would like your organization to say on every single return to work prescription form, you can certainly configure that recommended text in here. This includes your target return to work best practice of 10 days, and then also recommended capabilities and activity modifications. And these are diagnosis specific. So in this example, we're looking at a lumbar sprain. If we were looking at carpal tunnel syndrome versus a traumatic brain injury, these would be defined accordingly. So perhaps the employee is typically performing manual duties, but there are modified duties available and you'd like to make recommendations on to what those should be. You could include this in your return to work prescription. And then once all of this is completed to your satisfaction, you can hit Create Printable Document. And you have the option now to either print this return to work prescription or save it as a PDF. So it includes your general information, job description, which we'll kind of return to later to fill out this field. It includes your comments, diagnosis, return to work best practice, these recommended modifications, and a place for the treating provider to sign off and date this form. So essentially what this is just an easy way to export and share these return to work goals. And what we found by client feedback is this works most effectively if it's posed as a question. So if you approach the treating physician and say, hey, do you think this is a reasonable return to work time frame? And also, do you agree with this diagnosis? And if they do, great, they can sign off and date this. And if not, that's okay too, because it can create that dialogue and it might bring to light other things that are going on within the claim that you may not be aware of. And from a treating provider perspective, this could even be used at the point of care in order to set goals for the patient. I've included a job function evaluation form, and this is an optional form that can be completed manually. It includes more information on when the employee could expect to stand, sit, kneel, bend, push, etc. So displayed very prominently on this screen is the ODG Risk Assessment Score. This is a predictive modeling tool that scores the relative risk level of this claim on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 is the lowest level of risk, and 100 is the highest level of risk. And what we mean by that term risk is the likelihood that this claim will become one of your problematic or your high-cost claims. So this can identify those claims early on so you can take appropriate actions in order to prevent that from happening. And for those of you who are curious, there's really kind of two key data elements that drive this risk assessment score. So obviously it's impacted by the diagnosis, other confounding factors that we'll look at a little bit later. But the data elements that are driving it are what we refer to as magnitude, and that's the average number of days out of work, and also what we refer to as volatility. Volatility is the difference between your target or your best practice value and your average. So where there's a big disparity between these two numbers, that represents a higher volatility score. And we like to think of volatility as opportunity. Where there's a bigger volatility, you have more of an opportunity to engage that claim early on and improve outcomes. So we're looking at this at the diagnosis level. But when you're dealing at the claim level, there's a lot of different factors that go into impacting projected time out of work. So you can refine your search and include all those different factors. Now, historically, with the legacy version of ODG, you've always had the option to select from a job class, and you can still do that. But at last month, we included the ODG job profile, and this allows you to input the exact job title of the claimant. So here I could type in firefighter as an example, and then the system will populate underneath with all the different options tied to a firefighter. I'll select the first one. I can also input other factors such as the state where the employee is located, so perhaps this is a California claim. I can also input the age of the employee, and that really has a significant impact on projected time out of work. If I want to, I can enter in details such as the date of injury. And then we include 9 different confounding factors. These 9 factors are included really for 2 reasons. Number one, they're some of the most common occurring conditions and factors, so for ease of use, it's easy just to check these off. And number two, we found these factors to be some of the most impactful in terms of influencing time out of work. So perhaps I know this patient is also obese. Now, once I've input these other factors like the job or the firefighter job title, obesity, the age, you'll notice that your projected number of days out of work is longer. Also, the risk assessment score has gone up. And now that we've selected this firefighter, it's highlighted some return to work scenarios for you. And you'll notice that now with the firefighter addition, the job profile tab is now highlighted with a check mark. So I'm going to toggle over here. And what the job profile includes is a detailed job description. So this defines exactly what the job duties of a firefighter are. It also includes the physical demands of a firefighter, so it includes precisely what they do day to day within their average 8-hour work shift. And then it also includes a job demand score of 99. And what that indicates is that a firefighter's job duties are more demanding than 99% of the jobs that are out there. This information is also designed to be shared. So I can click on the Share Job Profile Now button. I can enter in my specific information, claim number, click Next, and then I could go ahead and enter in the employer information, hit Share Job Profile, And then with the click of the button, I can share these job profiles with employers so that they can become aware of the exact job descriptions and physical demands of their employees and make informed decisions as to if they can accommodate for early return to work or other. Okay. And then I'll show you, if once you select a job title, it is included in the return to work prescription. So I'll just briefly show you how this content marries up with the return to work prescription. So here it includes this job description of a firefighter. So this would now be included in your return to work prescription, and you could use this to communicate in more detail with providers. So everything that I've shown you with this job profile, this is all included in your ODG by MCG license. Now, there is a more enhanced version called Job X, and this is available as an upgrade, which could be a good option if you want to customize your job descriptions or provide more detailed physical demand analyses. And employers could subscribe to this, or carriers, TPAs, or other service providers could sponsor access for their employer clients. A couple of other things I'll point out with the Search Refine. I had mentioned these confounding factors, but just know you're not limited to only these factors. If the patient has multiple diagnoses, whether they be work-related or perhaps it's an underlying condition, but you know it will impact their physiological healing process, you can account for those by using the search tool. So now we're looking at a claim where the patient's obese with both a knee sprain and a back sprain, and you'll see how that impacts projected time out of work and your risk score. Also, just scrolling down, you'll see that we provide return to work scenarios in addition to these computer-generated values. So if you prefer to kind of drill down more into this claim, you can use these return to work scenarios for management purposes. This includes a list of all of the ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes that are tied to a lumbar sprain or a knee sprain. So this is one of the value adds of ODG by MCG versus the legacy, in that in the legacy version you're kind of forced to choose a diagnosis code, and that can be challenging, particularly with ICD-10 codes because there are so many of them. So with ODG by MCG, you have the option to search by a medical topic, and then all codes are rolled up to that topic. Now, you're not forced to search by a medical topic. If you know the diagnosis code, that's great. You can search by that method as well. We've included several consumer-facing resources in ODG by MCG. So let's take a look at these. The first are 3D animated videos. So these videos are a great resource for either clients who might not have a medical background, or it's content that can be shared with the injured or ill employees themselves so they can become more educated on their condition. So I'll just show you a couple of seconds of a preview of what these entail. These videos are hosted by Visual Health Solutions. They're one of our partners, and we're really working to bring more partner content into this interface. Another example of one of our longtime partners is Medline Plus. So I can open up this resource, and it brings me to more information on back injuries as an example. So a summary of what it is, possible diagnosis and tests, images, videos, and tutorials. So this is a great tool for non-clinical clients, or something that can be shared with patients themselves so that they can become more educated and knowledgeable on their diagnosis. This can also be translated into Spanish. And then a third piece of a consumer-facing resource is Return to Health, and this is hosted by Wiser Together. So this is included complimentary for your first 60 days of licensing ODG by MCG, and then should you choose, you can decide to keep this added on permanently. And it's a great resource for patients. It provides them with information on treatment options and really education so they can take a more hands-on approach in their journey to return to health. Okay. So I'm going to toggle over to the Costs tab. And as I do so, you'll notice how the system works is that once you search out criteria, all of the tabs that have relevant data are populated with a checkbox. So once I toggle over to the costs, you'll see that this includes a sum of the total cost, which is a sum of the indemnity, medical, and expense and administrative costs. So a little bit of information on what's driving these costs. It's driven by all of these input factors up here. And the data that's driving these costs is our collection and analysis of about 5 million workers' comp insurance claims. The indemnity cost projections are based on, it will take the ODG projected time out of work and multiply that by 2/3 of the average weekly wage. So average weekly wage is determined by the state that's entered. So if you recall, we're looking at a California claim. And you can override that. So if you know the actual weekly wage, you can plug that into the average weekly wage up here, and the system will recalculate for you. This also includes the sum of the overall medical costs that would be tied to a claim of this nature. So it gives you a good overview. One of the most common questions I receive is, do the medical costs drill down into specific types of medical costs? So for instance, X amount for physical therapy and so much for medications. And the answer is no, it's not that granular, but it gives you a good baseline or overall costs that you could expect. Finally, the expense and administrative costs. These are the projected administrative, surveillance, any legal expenses that you would typically see for a claim of this nature. And if it's a medical-only claim, you can simply check medical only, and that will remove the indemnity costs. And you'll also notice that the medical costs are reduced pretty significantly, because what we found is that one of the best things that a patient can do is return to work. That eliminates the likelihood that they will develop a disability mindset or get caught in a treatment trap where they're receiving treatment after treatment or prescription after prescription that may or may not be effective. And the next tab that I'll cover is treatment. So click on the treatment tab, and I have plugged in the knee sprain and back sprain search criteria. So now I'm pulling up treatment guidelines. So this lists any type of treatment that could be performed for any low back injury or any knee injury. And it lists all of these treatment options alphabetically. And you have the option now to filter by recommendation type. So we have categorized the treatment recommendations into 3 different types. And those types include recommended, not recommended, or under study. So if I only want to look at treatments that are recommended, I can do that by clicking on recommended. So now I'm reviewing any recommended treatment for knee and leg or low back injuries. I can also filter by category. So maybe I just want to look at injections and which injections are recommended for knee or low back injuries. And once I've decided that I want to review a treatment guideline, I can click on that link, and it will open up this treatment guideline. I can see that an epidural steroid injection is conditionally recommended as a possible option for short-term treatment of radicular pain. This includes the ODG criteria. So this is essentially patient selection criteria, meaning that in order for an ESI to be recommended, the patient should meet this criteria outlined in blue. Underneath this criteria, it includes a summary of the clinical evidence that's supporting this treatment recommendation, including several different hyperlinks. So if I click on any of these hyperlinks, it brings up a full citation of the study supporting this recommendation along with the PubMed ID. So if those are available, you can click on the PubMed ID, which will bring you to a full abstract of the study. These actual abstracts can be copied, pasted, printed, included in your reports for the purpose of advocating for or against the effectiveness of medical treatment. You also have the option right from the site to copy and paste, or you can use this printer icon, which will allow you to either print this or create a PDF. And that's sort of the roundabout way of finding treatment guidelines. You could also type in whatever you're looking for. So maybe you want to see what the physical therapy recommendations are for low back. So I can click on physical therapy. Of course, physical therapy is recommended for low back injuries. The criteria in blue provides recommendations on number of visits. And these recommendations are stratified by what the particular diagnosis is. Also, is it just medical treatment, post-injection treatment, or post-surgical treatment? And these give you a good idea of what you can expect to see. And of course, these are guidelines. They're intended to guide care. There will be patients that fall outside of guidelines. So, for example, you have a patient that heals more quickly. By no means are these a minimum recommendation. You may also have a patient who's really benefiting from the physical therapy. They're showing documented functional improvement, so it would make sense to authorize more visits than what ODG indicates. On the other side of that, you may have patients who are receiving years of physical therapy. They're not improving, and this gives you some sort of evidence-based reasoning as to why you could suggest discontinuing the physical therapy and perhaps moving forward with an alternative type of treatment that may be more effective. So now that we've selected these treatment guidelines, you'll notice that both of these guidelines are pinned to the screen. So you have your epidural steroid injection, your physical therapy treatment guidelines pinned to the screen. You could print these and you would just save them or save them as a PDF. So you can copy and paste this into your notes in your claims system. Another added piece of functionality is this copy URL. So this creates a unique URL right for this page. So if you ever want to come back here and review these guidelines, you can do that. So you could copy and paste this again into your notes in your claims system, or you could save it to a Word document or as a favorite in your browser. I'm going to click back on the home screen, and this will clear out my search history. So anytime you click on home, it clears everything out. I'm going to click on the back sprain tab, and I'll toggle over to the tau index. And for those of you who are familiar with the ODG UR advisor, the tau index is what we refer to as the next generation UR advisor. We call this the Treatment Analyzer on Outcomes. And for a given diagnosis, this maps all the different procedures that could be performed for this diagnosis. What's driving the information in this tool is the collection and analysis of about 5 million workers' comp insurance claims. So this includes information on the procedure name, group, data like frequency, number of visits, costs. But the three key elements of this tool are the payment flag, authorization number of visits, and the tau index. The payment flag is a color-coded flag system designed to streamline the treatment approval process. So there are 4 different colors of flags. There's green, yellow, red, and black. Anything that triggers a green flag indicates that it's recommended for automatic approval according to ODG. And it's recommended for automatic approval up to the authorization number of visits directly to the left of the flag. Green is what we categorize as an evidence-based approval. So that means that in addition to data suggesting that these are commonly performed procedures, there are also high-quality randomized controlled trials proving that these procedures are effective. Anything that triggers a yellow flag, these are for what we categorize as a data-driven approval. So I'll plug in an example of a cold pack. So what yellow indicates is that ODG recommends automatically approving these, again, up to the authorization number of visits. And the difference between yellow versus green is that yellow procedures mean that according to our collection of all this data, they're commonly performed, they have positive outcomes, and low costs. So ODG would recommend automatically approving these and not spending time and resources and money on sending these for pre-authorization or further review. Anything that triggers a red flag, those are for procedures that ODG would recommend reviewing before approving them. So a good example is work conditioning. So it doesn't mean that red procedures should not be approved. It just means that an actual person should look at this case and determine if it's necessary or not. So work conditioning is a great example. It's kind of more of a high-cost procedure or treatment, and it works very well for certain candidates if they meet certain criteria. So a nurse or a reviewer could look at this and determine if it's necessary or not. And a great resource to assist in making those decisions are the full text treatment guidelines that we just reviewed. Anything that triggers a black flag, these are for procedures that ODG recommends to route for review with extreme caution. So black procedures are procedures that you would not expect to see very often. And a good example is arthrodesis as mapped to a back sprain. Again, not something that you would normally see. And then what's new with the Tau index is this unique Tau index score. So we are in a great position being in the workers' comp industry in that we have access to outcome data, and that data is return to work. So what we've done is analyzed how each of these procedures correlates with return to work and given them a Tau index score. So this score ranges from 100 in the positive to 100 in the negative. And the higher that score is in the positive, that means the better the return to work outcomes are that are correlated with that procedure. The lower that score is in the negative, that means the worse the return to work outcomes are. So this can be used as additional decision support in order to determine if a treatment procedure is required or not. So if it's something that it triggers a red flag but it has a high Tau index score, that might be something you're more likely to approve. So from here, I'm going to jump over to the formulary. And how this formulary was derived is we took all of the recommendations related to drug therapy from the treatment guidelines, and we pulled those recommendations out and put them in an easy-to-interpret and easy-to-implement formulary. So this first indicates the class of the drug, the generic name, brand name, any notes. We try to keep these to a minimum, but we do include them where necessary. Generic equivalency indicates whether there is a generic equivalent approved by the FDA or not. Status is the most important column, and this indicates whether each drug is recommended as a first line of treatment in ODG or not. So if it's a Y drug, yes, it's recommended as a first line of treatment. If it's an N drug, it means it's not recommended as a first line of treatment, but it may be recommended as a second or a third line of treatment. So N doesn't mean never recommended. It just means that there might be other types of drugs or other types of therapies that are recommended before that specific drug is tried. And then finally, cost. This gives you an idea of the cost of each drug. And if you want more information as to where these costs are derived, you can click on Formulary Info, and then you can scroll down and it shows you the cost and source, as well as a detailed summary of how each cost is derived from number of milligrams, doses, and days of therapy. So using this formulary, you can decide if you want to filter by a drug class. So maybe, for example, you only want to look at benzodiazepines. You can look at benzodiazepines here. You can even search out a specific type of drug. So I could type in OxyContin as an example. And at any point in time, I can expand these lines, and it will bring up the full treatment guideline that's supporting this drug status and recommendation, as well as a list of all of the NDC codes affiliated with a given drug. Tied to the drug formulary is the opioid MED calculator, or morphine equivalent dosing calculator. Here I can plug in how many milligrams per day a patient is taking of any of the following drugs. So maybe we know that this patient is taking 100 milligrams of codeine, perhaps they're taking 20 milligrams of fentanyl, and then this will provide the morphine equivalent dosage for each unique drug as well as the combined total. And this includes the ODG opioid dosing guidelines. So ODG does not recommend that any patient take more than 100 MED per day, and also recommends caution for patients taking more than 50 MED per day. And that provides an overview of all of the different tabs included in the ODG by MCG solution. I'd also like to just highlight some of the training options. So if you click on any of the tabs and you don't search out any criteria, it will provide a short video. These videos are about 3 to 4 minutes long, and it walks you through in detail how to navigate through each of the tabs. At the top of the screen, there's a Help and Training tab, so this includes a link to sign up for these monthly live Intro to ODG webinars, or you can go through a self-paced training, and there are several different informations and guides along with a telephone number to the ODG help desk. And then I'll show you just kind of if you're interacting with the system, go through a couple of scenarios and how you might find information. So I have 3 questions and answers. The first is, what criteria needs to be met for ODG to recommend a spinal cord stimulator as treatment for chronic regional pain syndrome? So how I would find that is just type in a CS for spinal cord stimulator, and then I'll click under treatment guideline for chronic regional pain syndrome. And here I pull up that unique guideline. I can see it's conditionally recommended, and the patient selection criteria is outlined right in the blue. Next question. When would a 45-year-old obese employee in Arizona with a lumbar sprain returning to light duty be expected to return to work? So to find that from the home screen, I could search out low back sprain. And then we know that the patient is also 45. They're returning to light duty. So you can use the DOL drop-downs, or if you know the precise job title, of course you can now enter that in. The patient is in Arizona, and they are obese. So if I close this, I can see the ideal best practice is 5 days with an average of about 24 days. Final question. What is the likelihood that a claim involving a 50-year-old patient with a rotator cuff tear who smokes and has diabetes will become problematic? What steps can be taken to prevent this from happening? So to find that, I would type in rotator cuff tear. And we know that the patient is 50 years old, they smoke, and they have diabetes. And I'll close this. And we can see that the risk score is in the high range, so the likelihood that this claim is going to become problematic is very high. And there are different actions that can be taken. So perhaps that's just early intervention and more proactive claims or case management, or it could be routing it on to a supervisor or a medical professional right away. And of course, increased communication, that's always an option as well. So that wraps up my portion. And Daphne, are there any questions that came in?
Yes, thanks a lot, Ingrid. Let's see, we have this question. What if I can't find a topic in the treatment guidelines?
So I would suggest there's a couple of different options if you cannot find a topic. Oftentimes the answer is that it is there. It just might be that there are so many different terminologies or ways that a treatment could be referred to. So try searching. If you can't find it, we heavily suggest reaching out to the ODG help desk or your account manager. So we're always happy to help you. Again, more than likely it is included in there, but it's just a matter of how it's being searched out. So the help desk, there's a phone number to call here, or you can always email the help desk, which is odghelp@mcg.com. Or again, if you have an account manager, reach out to them. And if it's not included in the guidelines, then that's a way to get a topic included. So if you reach out to your account manager or the help desk, if it's not there, then they can route that request onto editorial, and they can go through a process, and then perhaps a treatment guideline can be added, and we would notify you by email when that update is included.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ingrid. Let's see. When will this version take the place of the legacy version of ODG?
That's a great question. So for now, we're keeping both versions running simultaneously. We plan on doing that for the foreseeable future. The loose plan is that sometime in 2020 the legacy version will be phased out. That could be early 2020, which is probably less likely, or later in the year. But there's no firm date as to when that will happen.
Okay, so maybe could you get into how does the licensing work and how much does it cost?
Yes, so this is available with an organizational license, and licensing is scaled to organizational size, type, and business volume. So if you're interested in your own customized quote, we suggest reaching out to your account manager, or if you're not an ODG client, you don't have an account manager, you can always reach out to the general ODG help desk for that information.
Okay, thank you. Is Medline Plus an added feature at an additional cost, or does it come with the basic license?
That comes with the basic license, so that's included with your ODG by MCG license.
Okay, great. Is this only available as a web subscription, or can the data be integrated?
It also can be integrated, so there's a couple of different ways you can integrate. So one is deep linkage to the website, so you could include a single sign-on link within your own system, so that would launch you out to the website, or you could do deep linking where you're linking to specific pages sort of based on diagnosis. So if you're looking at a claim with a back sprain, for example, you would link out to these pages with relevant data for a back sprain. We also offer the ability to integrate from the ODG application programming interface, and that pulls in these data elements into your system kind of more of an automated way where you're not searching anything out, you're not linking to our website, but instead you're just interacting with our data as it appears in your system.
Okay, thanks. Do providers use these guidelines?
Providers do use these guidelines. So they use them at the point of care in certain cases, and then they also use them oftentimes for reviews. So for IMEs or IMRs, they're very commonly used.
Okay, great. Is further training available for my staff?
Yes, so we offer a variety of training options. So I've kind of highlighted some of these at the end of the demonstration. So there's self-training tools that are available right on the site by using this drop-down tab. So there's some cheat sheets here, a video webinar, or you can click on these tabs and they'll give you a quick 2 to 3 minute training on each of these areas of content. Or we also offer customized training. So if you want a customized training webinar for your team, perhaps to focus in on some key elements, You can reach out to your account manager to set that up. If you don't have an account manager, you can always reach out to the help desk and we'll connect you with one who can conduct that training for you.
Okay. Can you change the findings based on Canadian provinces versus U.S. states?
At this point, no. You can search, as you noticed in the Refine, we have U.S. states included. We do not have Canadian provinces. Recommend just keeping it at all states if you're operating in Canada. We do, for Australia, we have an Australian version of this driven by Australian data. So that version you can search by Australian states.
Okay, great. What if my claimant has a confounding factor that is not listed?
Great question, and one of the more common ones that I get. So we include these 9 factors here, but you're not limited to these factors. We just include them because we see them. They're some of the most commonly encountered factors and also some of the ones that really drive that disability duration. But you can search out anything in this search bar. So you could type in arthritis, for example, and just pin those other conditions. So don't think that you're limited to these. You can search out any other confounding factors using this search bar.
All right, thanks. The legacy site used to show 3 data sets in the comorbidity calculator. Why are there only 2 on this site? So we have, just to demonstrate that, we've elected to show the target best practice and the average. We find this to be a little bit more simplified. You can, though, if you like that third value, and the third value is what we refer to as maximum anticipated return to work. So if you want that third value, which will be longer than the A value, we can configure that for you at the login. So we can include that. That's more of a value that clients tend to use for benchmarking, but these 2 values are more used for proactive claims and case management, so we've included these. But again, you can activate that third value if it's important to you. Okay, great. Thanks, Ingrid. This looks like our last question. Does the new interface offer deep linking by diagnosis code and single sign-on? Yes. And I kind of touched on that in the last integration question, but yeah, so you can include a single sign-on link within your system, and that would just launch your staff out to the website, or you can link to specific pages. So if you're using diagnosis codes to drive that link, you would link to a specific web page within the system. All right, thank you, Ingrid, and thank you for the very informative presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance and your questions. For more information, please reach out to your ODG account manager or contact our help desk at odghelp, that's HELP, at mcg.com, or 1-800-488-5548, or you can always go to our website at mcg.com/ODG. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.